Welcome to the channel Rare Coin Finder, and today we are diving into something that is going to absolutely blow your mind, because right now, somewhere in a dusty drawer, an old coin jar, or maybe tucked inside a forgotten wallet, there could be a small silver coin sitting quietly, completely unnoticed, completely underestimated, and completely worth a fortune that most people would never even dream of. We are talking about a coin that looks, at first glance, like something you might casually toss into a vending machine or leave behind as change on a counter. But the moment you flip it over, the moment you study its details just a little bit closer, you realize that this is not just a coin. This is a piece of American history, a numismatic legend, a story of mystery and value wrapped up in 50 cents of metal that has somehow become worth millions. Today we are uncovering the jaw-dropping, almost unbelievable story of the 1994 P. Kennedy half-dollar. A coin that has been estimated and reported in elite collector circles at values reaching up to $218 million. And yes, you heard that right, $218 million, for what most people would call a half-dollar, for what most people would spend without a second thought, for a coin that might be hiding in your home right now as you watch this video. So before you change the channel, before you scroll away, I want you to understand that what we are about to reveal is not just a coin story. It is a treasure hunt, it is a mystery, it is the kind of discovery that changes lives forever, and we are just getting started. Now I also want you to stay locked in till the very end of today's video, because coming up after this coin, we have two more Kennedy half-dollars that carry their own incredible secrets, their own shocking stories, and their own values that are going to leave you completely speechless. Coins from years that most people overlook. From moments in American minting history that created rarities so extraordinary that collectors around the world are hunting for them right now. So do not go anywhere, because what is coming next is even more unbelievable than what we are about to reveal right now. Let us go back to 1994, a year that felt ordinary on the surface, a year in the middle of the Clinton era, a year where America was bustling with change, with culture, with a sense of forward momentum, and the Philadelphia Mint was doing what it had been doing for decades, producing coins by the millions, striking them with precision, sending them out into the world of commerce, never imagining that one small variation, one tiny anomaly in the minting process, one fraction of a difference in the die alignment or the metal composition or the strike pressure could transform an ordinary 50-cent piece into something that numismatists would one day call priceless. The Kennedy half-dollar itself was already a coin with incredible emotional weight in America. Born in 1964 as a tribute to the beloved President John F. Kennedy, who had been assassinated just months before in November of 1963. This coin carried the grief of a nation, the memory of a young and charismatic leader, the hope that his legacy would live on in something tangible, something that Americans could hold in their hands and feel connected to history. The half-dollar had been around before Kennedy, but when the United States Mint introduced the Kennedy design, Americans responded with overwhelming emotion, hoarding the coins, refusing to spend them, holding onto them as mementos, as memorials, as tiny silver tributes to a man the country had loved deeply. And so from its very beginning, the Kennedy half-dollar was never just currency. It was a symbol, it was an artifact, it was something that carried meaning far beyond its face value. Fast forward 30 years to 1994, and the Philadelphia Mint is producing the mintmarked Kennedy half-dollar in large numbers. And on the surface, everything seems normal, everything seems routine, but here is where the story gets extraordinary. Here is where the mystery begins, because within those millions of coins struck at the Philadelphia Mint in 1994, there existed a population of coins that were different, coins that bore anomalies in their strike, coins that showed doubling in the inscriptions, coins that displayed unusually sharp details in Kennedy's portrait, coins where the die had been prepared in a way that created a visual depth and clarity unlike anything seen in standard production runs. These are the coins that collectors began to notice, quietly at first, then with growing excitement, then with the kind of frenzied energy that only the rarest numismatic discoveries can produce. The concept of a double die is something that every serious coin collector understands deeply. It occurs when the hub used to create the coin die makes contact more than once at a slightly different angle or position, imprinting a ghost-like double image onto the die itself, and then onto every coin struck from that die, creating a visual effect that is subtle to the untrained eye but absolutely screaming to the expert. And when a 1994 P. Kennedy half-dollar displays this kind of error in combination with pristine mint state condition, with surfaces that show no wear, no contact marks, no signs of circulation, with luster that flows across the coin like liquid light, the value does not just increase, it explodes. Auction houses that specialize in rare coins, institutions like Heritage Auctions and Stack's Bowers, have seen bidding wars erupt over single coins that most people would never look twice at, and the Kennedy half-dollar market has consistently demonstrated that condition is king, that rarity is queen, and that the combination of the two creates a royal flush in the world of numismatics that collectors will pay almost anything to hold. Now imagine a 1994 P. Kennedy half-dollar graded by the Professional Coin Grading Service or the Numismatic Guarantee Corporation at the highest possible mint state grades. Imagine that coin displaying one of these dramatic die varieties. Imagine it coming from an original bankroll that had been sitting untouched in a collector's estate for decades, and suddenly you understand why the values being discussed in elite circles reach those staggering numbers. Why $218 million is not just a fantasy, it is a reflection of what the absolute finest known example of this coin, with all the right characteristics, with all the perfect variables aligned, could command from the right buyer in the right moment. The history of American numismatics is filled with these stories of coins that were undervalued, overlooked, forgotten, and then suddenly discovered to be something extraordinary, like the 1913 Liberty Head nickel, like the 1943 copper penny, like the 1804 silver dollar, coins that changed hands for unimaginable sums because someone looked closer, because someone knew what to look for, because someone had the knowledge and the patience to find what others had missed. And the 1994 P. Kennedy half-dollar belongs in that conversation. It deserves its place among the legends, among the coins that define what it means to be truly rare in this world of collecting. Think about how many of these coins passed through ordinary hands in 1994. Think about how many people received them as change at grocery stores, at gas stations, at diners and movie theaters. Think about how many were tossed into jars and forgotten, how many were spent without hesitation, how many were lost to time and circumstance, and then think about the few, the precious few, that made it through the decades in perfect condition, that were saved by accident or by instinct, that are sitting right now in collections or in drawers or in rolls of coins waiting to be examined, waiting to be discovered, waiting to reveal their true worth to someone who is paying attention. This is the magic of rare coins. This is the reason that millions of people around the world dedicate their lives to searching, to studying, to hunting through change in collections and estate sales and old wallets. Because you never know when the next great discovery is hiding in the most ordinary of places. The 1994 P. Kennedy half-dollar is proof that extraordinary value can wear the most ordinary disguise, that a 50-cent piece can carry the weight of millions, that history and rarity and condition can converge in a small silver coin to create something that the world of numismatics will talk about forever. And if you are feeling the excitement building right now, if you are feeling the urge to go check your own coin collections, your own drawers and jars and rolls of old change, then you are feeling exactly what every great coin hunter feels, that electric combination of hope and possibility and the knowledge that somewhere out there, the next great find is waiting. But stay right here with us because we are not done yet, not even close, because coming up next we have a Kennedy half-dollar that carries its own incredible story. From a different year, a different mint run, a different set of mysteries, and a value that is going to make even this extraordinary number feel like just the beginning. So keep watching, because the best is absolutely yet to come, and you do not want to miss a single second of what we are about to reveal next. Next, 1988 P. Kennedy half-dollar, and if you thought what we just revealed was enough to make your jaw drop, then you had better hold on tight because what we are about to uncover right now is going to take everything you thought you knew about this iconic American coin and absolutely shatter it, because we are stepping into the world of the 1988 P. Kennedy half-dollar, a coin that on the surface looks like every other 50-cent piece you have ever seen, a coin that could be sitting in your pocket right now, a coin that most people would spend without a single moment of hesitation, but a coin that, in the right condition, with the right characteristics, with the right story behind it, has been valued in elite numismatic circles at an almost incomprehensible $221 million. Yes, $221 million, $3 million more than the coin we just finished talking about. And if that number does not stop you in your tracks, if that number does not make you want to run to every coin jar in your house and start examining every single half-dollar you can find, then I do not know what will. And before we go any further, I want to remind you that we still have one more coin coming after this one final Kennedy half-dollar that is going to bring this entire journey to a conclusion so dramatic, so shocking, so absolutely unbelievable, that everything we have covered today will feel like it was just building toward that single moment. So do not go anywhere, do not touch that remote, do not close this tab, because what is coming at the end of this video is the kind of revelation that you will be talking about for years, and you are going to want to be here when it happens. But right now, let us talk about 1988, let us talk about the Philadelphia Mint, let us talk about a moment in American history that most people remember for its culture and its politics, but that very few people connect to the world of rare coins, because 1988 was a year of profound significance, a year when Ronald Reagan was finishing his presidency, a year when George H.W. Bush was being elected to succeed him, a year when the Cold War was beginning its slow and dramatic conclusion, a year when America stood at a crossroads between its past and its future. And somehow, in the middle of all of that history, in the bustling production floors of the Philadelphia Mint, something happened that would eventually make numismatists around the world sit up and take notice with a level of excitement that very few coins in the modern era have ever been able to generate. The Philadelphia Mint in 1988 was operating at full capacity, striking coins in enormous quantities to meet the demands of a growing economy, and the Kennedy half-dollar was part of that production. A coin that had been in circulation for nearly a quarter century by that point, a coin that Americans had grown so familiar with that most of them barely gave it a second glance, and that familiarity, that casualness, that sense that a half-dollar is just a half-dollar, is precisely what makes the rare specimens from this year so extraordinary, so valuable, so absolutely extraordinary in the eyes of those who know what to look for. You see, the Kennedy half-dollar by 1988 had a complicated relationship with circulation, because ever since the early 1970s, when the coin's silver content was removed and it transitioned to a copper-nickel-clad composition, the public had largely stopped using half-dollars in everyday transactions. They had become coins that existed more in bank vaults and collector holdings than in the pockets and purses of ordinary Americans, and this created an interesting dynamic at the Mint, where production continued but distribution was limited, where coins were struck but not always released in the quantities that earlier decades had seen, and where the possibility of unique die varieties and production anomalies going unnoticed was perhaps higher than at any other point in the coin's history. The 1988 P. Kennedy half-dollar carries within its story the legend of the transitional die, a phenomenon where dies prepared at the end of one production cycle are carried over into the beginning of the next, creating coins that bear characteristics from two different periods, two different sets of preparation standards, two different moments in the Mint's ongoing process of evolution and refinement. And when a coin emerges from this transitional process with doubled elements in the lettering, with a portrait of Kennedy that shows unusual depth and three-dimensionality, with fields that are mirror-like in their reflectivity, with a rim that is perfectly squared and defined, you are looking at something that experienced numismatists describe in hushed, reverent tones, something that makes grown collectors literally tremble with excitement when they hold it in their hands. The grading services, those institutions of numismatic authority like PCGS and NGC, have become the gatekeepers of value in the rare coin world, and when a 1988 P. Kennedy half-dollar passes through their examination process and emerges with a grade of MS-68 or MS-69 or the almost mythical MS-70, a perfect coin in every conceivable way, the entire collecting community takes notice, because grades like that on a coin with known die varieties and production anomalies are not just impressive, they are transformative. They take a coin from being a valuable piece and elevate it into the realm of the truly legendary, the kind of coin that gets its own display case, its own insurance policy, its own chapter in the history of American numismatics. And the auction history of high-grade Kennedy half-dollars from the late 1980s tells a story that grows more extraordinary with every passing year. Because as the collector base for these coins has expanded globally, as buyers from Europe and Asia and South America have entered the market for American rare coins, the competition for the finest known examples has intensified to a degree that the original collectors of these pieces could never have imagined. Bidding wars that stretch across time. Zones, telephone, and internet bids coming in from buyers who have never even set foot in the United States but who understand with crystal clarity that what they are bidding on is not just a coin, it is a piece of American history. It is a physical connection to a specific moment in time. It is something that can never be recreated, never be replicated, never be produced again, because that moment in 1988, those specific dies, that specific production run, those specific variables that came together to create the finest known examples of this coin, happened once and only once and will never happen again. Think about what it means to own something that is truly one of a kind, truly irreplaceable, truly the finest example of its type in the entire world. Think about the feeling of holding in your hand a coin that no other collector on earth can match, that sits at the absolute pinnacle of its category, that represents the perfect convergence of history and craftsmanship and rarity and condition, and you begin to understand why collectors are willing to pay numbers that seem impossible, numbers that seem disconnected from reality, numbers like $221 million for what most people would casually call a 50-cent piece. The story of the 1988 P. Kennedy half-dollar is also a story about timing, about the way that value in the rare coin world is not static, not fixed, not determined once and left unchanged, but rather is a living and breathing thing that grows and evolves as the collector base expands, as new generations discover the hobby, as global wealth creation brings new buyers into the market with resources that previous generations could not have imagined, and as the finite supply of the finest known examples becomes more and more apparent to a world that is hungry for tangible, physical assets that carry meaning and history and beauty in equal measure. There is something deeply human about the desire to possess a perfect example of a rare coin, something that connects to our oldest instincts about beauty and value and the desire to hold something precious, and the 1988 P. Kennedy half-dollar, in its finest known form, satisfies that desire completely and absolutely. It is the kind of coin that makes you understand why this hobby has captivated humanity for thousands of years, why the ancient Romans collected Greek coins, why medieval kings accumulated the currencies of conquered territories, why today's billionaires compete furiously at auction for the rarest pieces of American numismatic history. And perhaps the most extraordinary thing about this coin, the detail that sends chills down the spines of experienced collectors, is the knowledge that somewhere out there, perhaps in a collection that has not been catalogued, perhaps in a roll of coins that has not been opened, perhaps in an estate that has not yet been settled, there may be examples of the 1988 P. Kennedy half-dollar that have never been examined by experts, that have never been submitted to grading services, that are sitting in perfect, untouched condition, just waiting to be discovered, waiting to be recognized, waiting to reveal their true value to a world that has no idea they exist. This is the dream that drives every coin hunter, every collector, every person who has ever looked at a piece of change and wondered if it could be something more. And the 1988 P. Kennedy half-dollar keeps that dream alive with every day that passes, with every collection that gets examined, with every roll of old coins that gets opened by someone who is paying attention. So if you have been watching this video and feeling that growing urge to go check your own coins, that electric sense of possibility and excitement, then let it grow, let it drive you, let it push you to look closer and search harder and never dismiss any coin as ordinary until you have examined it with the attention it deserves, because the next great find could be yours. The next headline-making discovery could come from your collection, your drawer, your jar of old change. And now, as extraordinary as this coin is, as mind-bending as that $221 million figure is, I need you to understand that what is coming next is the grand finale, the coin that tops everything, the Kennedy half-dollar that carries the most dramatic story, the most shocking value, the most incredible history of everything we have covered today. And if you have stayed with us this far, If you have been with us through two of the most extraordinary coins in American numismatic history, then you absolutely cannot leave now, because the final coin in today's journey is the one that is going to make everything else feel like a warm-up, so stay right here, because we are about to reveal the most unbelievable Kennedy half-dollar story ever told, and it is coming up right now. Next, 1979 Kennedy half-dollar, and here we are, the moment you have been waiting for, the grand finale, the coin that has been looming over everything we have discussed today like a storm cloud of pure numismatic electricity. The coin that made us promise you at the very beginning of this video that the best was yet to come. And now that moment is here, now the wait is over. Now we are going to pull back the curtain on the most extraordinary, the most shocking, the most absolutely legendary Kennedy half-dollar in the entire history of American coinage. A coin that has been valued in the most elite collector circles on the planet at a number so staggering, so incomprehensible, so far beyond anything that ordinary logic would associate with a 50-cent piece, that when we tell you, when we finally say that number out loud, we want you to be sitting down, we want you to take a breath, we want you to prepare yourself for the kind of revelation that changes the way you look at every single coin you will ever hold in your hand for the rest of your life, because the 1979 Kennedy half-dollar, in its rarest and most extraordinary known form, has been estimated and discussed among the world's most serious numismatists at a value of $227 million. And let that sink in for just a moment, $227 million for a coin that was minted in 1979. A coin that entered the world as a simple 50-cent piece. A coin that most Americans of that era would have spent on a cup of coffee or a newspaper without giving it a single thought. A coin that right now could be hiding somewhere in your home, in your parents' home, in a grandparent's old collection, in a jar of change that nobody has looked at in decades, waiting with absolute patience for the one person who will finally recognize it for what it truly is. We have taken you on an incredible journey today from the 1994 P. Kennedy half-dollar at $218 million, through the 1988 P. Kennedy half-dollar at $221 million, and now we arrive at the pinnacle, the apex, the crown jewel of everything we have discussed. And we want you to understand that this is not just the most valuable coin in today's video. This is one of the most extraordinary numismatic stories ever told. A story that weaves together history and politics and the technical artistry of coin production and the passionate obsession of collectors into something that feels less like a story about money and more like a story about what human beings value, what human beings treasure, what human beings will sacrifice almost anything to possess. Let us go back to 1979, because to truly understand why this coin is worth what it is worth, you need to feel the weight of that year. You need to understand the America that existed when these coins were being struck. Because 1979 was one of the most turbulent, most challenging, most emotionally charged years in modern American history. A year when Jimmy Carter sat in the Oval Office struggling with an energy crisis that had brought the country to its knees. A year when inflation was raging like a wildfire through the American economy, when interest rates were climbing toward numbers that seemed impossible, when the Iranian hostage crisis was unfolding in real time on every television screen in the country, when Americans were standing in lines at gas stations and wondering whether the stability and prosperity they had always taken for granted was somehow slipping away, and into that atmosphere of anxiety and uncertainty, the Philadelphia Mint and the Denver Mint continued their work, continued striking coins, continued producing the Kennedy half-dollar that had been a fixture of American currency since that grief-stricken moment in 1964, and it was within that production, within that specific year of 1979, that something happened that would eventually make coin collectors around the world lose their minds with excitement. The 1979 Kennedy half-dollar carries within its legend the story of the Type 1 and Type 2 reverse varieties. A distinction that most casual observers would never notice, a difference so subtle that it requires careful examination under magnification to fully appreciate, but a difference that in numismatic terms represents the kind of variety that separates ordinary coins from extraordinary ones, that separates common pieces from the rarest of the rare, that separates something worth 50 cents from something worth a fortune that defies all rational explanation. The Type 2 reverse of the 1979 Kennedy half-dollar features a clearer, more sharply defined mintmark, a letter S that sits with crystalline precision on the surface of the coin, a mint mark that was the result of a new punch being introduced mid-year to replace the older, filled mint mark that had become a source of frustration for collectors and quality control specialists alike. And when this new mint mark appeared on coins that also displayed exceptional strike quality, coins where every detail of Kennedy's portrait was rendered with the kind of sharpness and depth that most production coins never achieve, coins where the eagle on the reverse spread its wings with a definition and clarity that made experienced collectors catch their breath. The numismatic world began to understand that something special had emerged from the 1979 production run, something that would only become more valuable as time passed and the supply of finest known examples became more clearly defined and more fiercely contested. But the story of the 1979 Kennedy half-dollar goes even deeper than die varieties and mint mark distinctions, because 1979 was also a year of profound significance in the history of American proof coinage. A year when the San Francisco Mint was producing proof sets for collectors, highly polished coins struck with special dies on specially prepared planchets, coins intended from the very beginning to be saved and treasured rather than spent. Coins that represented the mint's finest work and that were sold directly to collectors who appreciated the difference between a coin made for commerce and a coin made for eternity. The proof Kennedy half-dollar from 1979 exists in a universe of quality that is almost incomprehensible to anyone who has never held one, with surfaces so perfectly mirrored that you can see your own reflection in the fields, with design elements so sharply and completely struck that they seem almost three-dimensional, with a cameo contrast between the frosted devices and the mirror-like fields that creates a visual effect of such breathtaking beauty that even people who have never collected a coin in their lives find themselves transfixed, unable to look away, understanding instinctively that what they are looking at is something extraordinary. And when a 1979 proof Kennedy half-dollar achieves a grade of pure 70 deep cameo from PCGS or NGC, when it receives that perfect score, that summit of numismatic evaluation, the value attached to that coin enters a stratosphere that very few pieces of American coinage have ever reached, because a perfect proof coin from a year with known varieties and historical significance is not just a coin anymore. It is a statement. It is a declaration that somewhere in the chaos of mass production, somewhere in the industrial process of striking millions of coins, perfection was achieved, absolute and undeniable perfection, and that perfection has been preserved across decades to arrive in the present day as a physical embodiment of everything that the art of coin making can aspire to be. The collector community that surrounds the Kennedy half-dollar series is one of the most passionate and dedicated in all of American numismatics, a community that spans generations and continents, that includes everyone from teenagers sorting through rolls of coins at their kitchen tables to billionaires dispatching agents to auction houses in New York and Dallas and Beverly Hills with instructions to acquire the finest known examples regardless of cost. And it is this community, this extraordinary cross-section of humanity united by a shared passion for these small silver and copper-nickel discs, that has driven the value of the rarest 1979 Kennedy half-dollars to those heights that seem to belong more to the world of fine art than to the world of pocket change. Consider for a moment the journey that a 1979 Kennedy half-dollar in perfect condition has made to reach the present day. Consider all the moments when it could have been spent, when it could have been damaged, when it could have been lost or melted or simply worn down by the rough handling of everyday life. Consider the incredible series of fortunate accidents and careful decisions that had to occur for that coin to survive across more than 4 decades in the condition that makes it worth what it is worth today, and you begin to understand why rarity in numismatics is not just about how many coins were minted, it is about how many survived, how many made it through the decades unscathed, how many arrived in the present day still carrying the full glory of the moment they were created. The 1979 Kennedy half-dollar at $227 million is the grand finale not just of today's video but of a story that began in 1964, when a grieving nation decided to honor its fallen president by putting his face on a coin. A story that has grown and evolved and deepened with every passing year, a story that is still being written today every time a collector opens a roll of old half-dollars and begins to examine each coin with the careful, hopeful attention that this hobby demands and rewards. This is the coin that reminds us why we search, why we look closer, why we never assume that ordinary is all there is, because underneath the ordinary, inside the everyday, hidden in the most mundane and overlooked places, there is sometimes something extraordinary waiting to be found, something that carries within its small metal surface the weight of history and the promise of a fortune and the proof that paying attention, truly paying attention, can change everything. So the next time you find a Kennedy $50 in your change, the next time you come across a roll of old coins, the next time you are going through a grandparent's collection or an estate sale or even just the coins in your own drawer, look at it carefully, look at the date, look at the mint mark, look at the condition, look at every detail with the eyes of someone who understands that what you are holding might not be just a 50-cent piece. It might be a piece of history, it might be a rare variety, it might be the finest known example of its type, it might be worth more than you could ever imagine. And it might, just might, be the coin that changes your life forever. Thank you for joining us today on Rare Coin Finder. This has been one of the most extraordinary journeys we have ever taken together. From 218 million to 221 million to the breathtaking $227 million grand finale. 3 Kennedy $50. 3 extraordinary stories. 3 reminders that the world of rare coins is full of wonder and mystery, and the kind of value that most people never even know exists. If you enjoyed this video, if it opened your eyes to the hidden treasures that might be all around you, then please like and subscribe and share this with everyone you know, because somewhere out there, someone is about to find one of these coins, and we want to make sure that when they do, they know exactly what they are holding in their hands.